Good evening and welcome to The Truth About Trafficking, the first webinar in a four-part series presented by the Baltimore County Human Trafficking Workgroup. This first webinar will introduce you to human trafficking and how it affects our communities. We would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us this evening to learn more about this topic. Increasing the public awareness and striving for a strong community response to human trafficking will help to decrease this crime in our county. Thank you to every person that is attending tonight. Your concern for victims and survivors and your support is very appreciated. On behalf of the Baltimore County Human Trafficking Workgroup, I would like to sincerely thank all of our partners who have helped to make this public awareness project a reality. Our partners include, in no particular order, the Baltimore County Police Department, the Baltimore County Department of Juvenile Services, Court-appointed Special Advocates of Baltimore County, the Baltimore County Department of Human Services, the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office, Greater Baltimore Medical Center, Turnaround, and Baltimore County Public Schools. Members of each of these agencies comprise the Baltimore County Human Trafficking Workgroup and take a collaborative, victim-centered approach to address and respond to human trafficking in our county. It is now my privilege to introduce our Baltimore County Executive, John Olszewski, to provide opening remarks for tonight's session.
Thank you so much for that welcome, and good evening to everyone. I hope that this evening finds you well, and thank you for joining us for this critical effort as we strive to protect survivors of human trafficking and prevent this horrific crime from happening in the first place. Thanks so much to tonight's presenters, Kelly Tro and David Williams, who do so much work for this essential cause. Thank you for being here to share your expertise tonight. I also want to say that in January, we recognize Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and it is an important time for us to raise awareness of the unspeakable crimes that harm so many children and young women, especially young women of color. Between June of 2013 and May of 2020, there have been 671 reports made to Child Protective Services for suspected sex trafficking in Maryland. In that same time, Baltimore County has received 87 reports, which ranks third in the state after Baltimore City and Prince George's County. Of those 87 reports, 87 people, almost all the victims were female, and 62% were Black girls. Sadly, at the same time, we know that this crime is often underreported, and that the number of victims is actually likely significantly higher. And amid the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that the vulnerabilities and risks of human trafficking are as great as ever. Survivors of human trafficking may experience unique difficulties in this time. And we believe that every resident in Baltimore County deserves to feel safe and secure. And when lives are put in danger here, we must be ready to help our neighbors and loved ones find safety. And we must do more to prevent these awful abductions before they occur. Part of that effort begins with raising awareness and ensuring our neighbors and residents are equipped with the information they need to recognize the signs of human trafficking and what to do when they see it. That's what we'll be touching on today, what to look for in our communities and what we can do to help survivors. The crime of human trafficking is complex and it's often misunderstood. So it's critical that each of us understands the risk factors, signs of victimization, and tactics used by these criminals, and do what we can if human trafficking is suspected. In Baltimore County, with our agencies and partners just listed, we are committed to doing all that we can to curb these heinous crimes. That's why we partner with these incredible organizations to monitor human trafficking and protect victims, including GBMC and Turnaround, which serve as the county's regional navigator for human trafficking cases. Our multidisciplinary approach leverages relationship with both law enforcement as well as social services, hospitals, and nonprofits to support this critical mission. I want to thank all of our partners for their tireless work on this important cause, and I want tonight to reaffirm Baltimore County's commitment to doing all that we can to protect the lives of human trafficking victims. We're committed to partnering with you as we continue building a safer Baltimore County for everyone. Thanks again for having me tonight, and looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you to our Baltimore County Executive for those remarks. We will continue to offer webinar sessions monthly on topics related to human trafficking. The series will conclude in April with a panel discussion led by the county's leading subject matter experts. Please try and join us for our future webinars. A few housekeeping items before we begin. All attendees will be muted to ensure sound quality. Spanish translation is available. I would like to take a moment to give a huge thank you to Pilar Zimmer for providing the Spanish translation for this webinar. If you would like to listen to this webinar in Spanish, please click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and choose the Spanish option. For best sound quality, please also click Mute Original Audio if you are choosing this option. If at any point you decide to switch back to English, please remember to click Unmute Original Audio in order to hear the presentation in English. Please utilize the Q&A function at any time during the presentation to submit your questions, which can be sent in anonymously. We will have a Q&A segment at the end of this session. For those that have submitted questions in advance, we will answer all questions during the series. Questions have been filtered and will be included in the most appropriate session. An evaluation will be available following this session and is completely voluntary, but we would certainly appreciate any feedback you would like to share. And lastly, this webinar will be recorded and archived on the Baltimore County Human Trafficking Workgroup's website for future viewing. Due to the subject matter of this session, we would like to share a disclaimer before we begin. This session is not intended for children, and it may be triggering to some attendees. Please feel free to leave this presentation at any time. We know that this is a very difficult topic to discuss, but it is also very important in order to raise awareness, prevent trafficking, and assist current victims and survivors. If you do need assistance, please contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline 24 hours a day. You can call 1-888-3737-888 or text BeFree, which is 233-733. The hotline information will also be available at the bottom of each slide if needed. We are going to start with a few poll questions. The first question is this your first human trafficking training? Second, do you think human trafficking is a problem in Baltimore County? And lastly, if you encountered a victim of human trafficking, would you know what to do? We will give everyone a few minutes to answer these poll questions. Great. Thank you to everyone who participated in that poll. You will see the results on your screen. We really hope that you do learn a lot from this webinar. And for those that answered no to any of the questions, we are confident that this webinar will help to teach you about the prevalence in Maryland and our county and the best steps to take if you do encounter a victim or have any suspicions. Let's now introduce our speakers for tonight's webinar. My name is Ashley Macri, and I am the co-chair of the Baltimore County Human Trafficking Workgroup and will be moderating this session. I am thrilled to announce our two speakers, Kelly Truax and Dr. David Williams. Kelly Truax is the Community Outreach Coordinator and Human Trafficking Liaison with Greater Baltimore Medical Center's SAFE program. She joined the GBMC SAFE and DV program in September of 2018. She holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from Mount St. Mary's University. She was born and raised in Baltimore County and has very strong ties to the community. Her professional experience started at Johns Hopkins Bayview Center for Addiction and Pregnancy as the intake outreach coordinator with a focus on domestic violence treatment and health comorbidities. Ms. Truex has been involved in the school systems throughout Baltimore County for numerous years. She has coached girls soccer and lacrosse at Delaney High School and Eastern Technical High School, was a life skills instructor in the special education department at Chesapeake High School, and a science teacher at the Arrow School. Ms. Truex has extensive case management experience, including providing direct support to adults and children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Ms. Truex is a Maryland Board of Nursing approved instructor for the GBMC Forensic Nurse Examiner course, has presented at the GBMC Critical Care Nursing Conference and the GBMC Neurobiology of Trauma Conference. She successfully completed the 40-hour child exploitation course through the Baltimore County Police Department, is a patient advocate, and a certified application assistant through Safe at Home. In addition to her current role as the community outreach coordinator, she is GBMC's human trafficking liaison and has taught extensively on the topic. Dr. David Williams is a member of the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force and co-founder of Prevent Abuse and Neglect Through Dental Awareness, Mid-Atlantic PANDA. He received his dental degree from Temple University and master's degrees in systems management from the University of Southern California and master's in public health from West Virginia University. Following graduation from dental school, he was on active duty in the Army for 12 years, including 3 years as the dental surgeon of the 10th Special Forces Airborne. Following his separation from active duty, he served an additional 14 years in the Army Reserve, including serving as Commander 3298th Dental Detachment and the Command Dental Surgeon of the 77th Regional Support Command. He is a retired colonel. Following his active service, he was in the private practice in Western Maryland for 21 years before transitioning to academia, first at the University of Maryland School of Dentistry, and then Hagerstown Community College and Howard Community College. He also has served as the manager of oral health programs at Carroll County Health Department. He is the past president of the Maryland Academy of General Dentistry and has served as the president of the Maryland State Board of Dental Examiners and the Maryland State Dental Association. He is the co-founder of Mid-Atlantic Prevent Abuse and Neglect Through Dental Awareness that teaches healthcare professionals identification and response to cases of interpersonal violence. We welcome both of our speakers tonight. I will now pass it on to Kelly to begin our presentation.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Ashley, and we are going to jump right into the presentation. So, what do most people think when they hear the words human trafficking? This crime is often sensationalized, and the misconceptions can be fueled by the entertainment industry. What we see in movies and on television rarely depicts victims accurately. We typically hear things like victims are chained up, there's been sightings of white vans in the area that are kidnapping people off of the street. There have also been a lot of recent conspiracy theories in which children are being sold online by big box retailers or by someone simply ordering a pizza. What we see in movies and what we read online can affect the community's view on what exactly human trafficking is, and unfortunately, it can perpetuate the myths that are associated with this crime. It is commonly believed that a victim will fit a certain profile and look a certain way. These beliefs can actually decrease the likelihood of identifying an actual victim if they don't fit that preconceived profile. When you Google human trafficking victim, something like on this screen will pop up, which further perpetuates the myth that victims are held against their will, physically restrained, and beaten. On the screen, you will see some of these common myths. We don't normally see many victims who are physically restrained. What we do see is more of a psychological control that traffickers will have over their victims. Victims are not normally just kidnapped off the street. Studies show that the majority of victims know their trafficker. They are not strangers to them. Another misbelief is that human trafficking only involves sex trafficking and only females are victims. There are other types of trafficking, including labor trafficking, and anyone can be victimized, including men and boys. Smuggling and trafficking are not the same thing. Smuggling is a crime against a country and its borders, and trafficking is a crime against a person. Victims do not need to be moved across a county, country, or state borders for it to be considered trafficking. Some victims are trafficked without ever even leaving their home. And lastly, a big myth is that victims will always want help and accept help. This is unfortunately not true. It is actually rare that a victim will initially disclose even when asked direct questions. Oftentimes, victims will deny that anything is wrong at all and minimize their victimization. Some victims don't even recognize that they are a victim. So again, when we have a false idea about how a victim should look or should act, we are going to miss actual victims. What is human trafficking? We talked about what human trafficking isn't, so what is it? Human trafficking is not black and white. Every situation may be different. There are so many different ways that traffickers will recruit, groom, abuse, exploit, and control their victims. And a victim may not even have a trafficker at all, which may sound very confusing. On the screen are the legal definitions of human trafficking. They can be a little confusing when you read them. Simplified, human trafficking is when a controlling person uses force, fraud, or coercion to sexually exploit another person or to exploit them for labor. Also, something that is very important is that human sex trafficking also includes any minor who is involved in commercial sex, regardless of trafficker involvement or if the acts are voluntary. So anyone under the age of 18 who has involvement in commercial sex, regardless of the situation, is considered a human trafficking victim. A commercial sex act is any sexual act that is exchanged for money or something of value. This can even be a perceived value. It does not have to have a monetary value attached to it. This may be for money, drugs, food, shelter, a ride, and material possessions. Commercial sex acts include prostitution, pornography, stripping, and again, any sexual act in exchange for something of value. Force, fraud, and coercion. For all labor trafficking, no matter the age of the victim, force, fraud, or coercion must be present. For sex trafficking of an adult over the age of 18, force, fraud, or coercion must be present. For minors, anyone under the age of 18, force, fraud, or coercion may be present, but it is not required for it to be considered trafficking. So what is force, fraud, or coercion? Force can involve physical abuse, sexual assault, confinement, or deprivation of food, water, or sleep. Fraud can include tricking a person into exploitation. Coercion can include threats, intimidation, or blackmail may be used, especially with younger populations. Dr. Williams will talk more about what type of force, fraud, and coercion is used when he discusses the control tactics that are commonly used by traffickers. How we view human trafficking. This is a great photo from an organization called the Red Light Rebellion that shows how Hollywood depicts trafficking and how viral online stories can spread misinformation about how trafficking occurs. If you cannot read the top right story, it says, "Women, I need your attention. If you notice a zip tie on your car, mailbox, fence, etc., they're used by sex traffickers to note you're a woman who's alone. Don't take them off when you immediately see it. Wait until you get to a different destination because they're trying to distract you by getting it off and then abducting you." Stories like this are everywhere online. There are social media posts that go viral, warning women that sex traffickers are abducting people from shopping center parking lots. White vans are driving around kidnapping kids for the purpose of sexual slavery, and kids are being kidnapped by sex traffickers in broad daylight at stores when their parents took their eyes off of them for 1 second. These stories are meant to raise awareness, actually hurt victims, survivors, and anti-trafficking work. They distract from the true issue because many people are so focused on the false reports and believe it's the stranger danger they need to worry about. They will miss the signs of human trafficking because they are looking the other way and just don't know. We teach our children and loved ones about stranger danger to prevent human trafficking, when it is actually extremely rare for a trafficker to kidnap someone off of the street. We aren't paying enough attention in teaching about how traffickers actually operate. The internet and social media play a huge role in human trafficking. Some studies showed that the majority of sex trafficking victims met their trafficker online in a very non-threatening way. Children are often the targets because of their vulnerabilities. It can be something as simple as a message on the bottom right. Hey, you're really cute and I like you. If this is sent to a 13-year-old girl from an abusive home looking for an opportunity for love and a new life, this could be very enticing to her. Messages like this are a pretty common way that traffickers first begin their recruitment process with their victims. It is really important to be able to differentiate myth from fact and not feed into the sensationalized viral stories you may read, because they will just further perpetuate incorrect views about this crime. Again, human trafficking isn't black and white, and it takes many forms. I am going to share a few examples to demonstrate how every situation may be different. I would like to point out that each will be real-life examples and remind everyone of the disclaimer in effort not to trigger anyone. Please feel free to mute your computers at any time. A young teenager from a dysfunctional family begins talking to a boy online, and they begin a relationship. He tells her he will take care of her and give her a good life if she runs away with him. One day, she decides to run away from home and meets who she believes to be her boyfriend. At first, he treats her really well, and then one day, he says that she needs to help out and pay him back for all the money he has been spending, and he asks her to have sex with another man to make some money. She says no, and he physically beats her and forces her to have sex with this man. He threatens to beat her again if she does not do what he says. After that, he continues to force her to have sex with men almost daily and keeps all of the money. In this example, the trafficker used fraud at first and then force and coercion to exploit this young girl. A mother with a substance abuse addiction makes a deal with her drug dealer that he can take her young child for the night for the purpose of sexual abuse in exchange for drugs. In this example, the mother is the trafficker, and she is trafficking her young child because she is exchanging her child for drugs, something of value. A young male teenager who identifies as gay is not accepted by his family and runs away. He is homeless and meets other teenagers in similar situations who introduce him to men who will pay him for sexual favors. He does this voluntarily in order to make money for a hotel room and food. There is no trafficker, force, fraud, or coercion present in this example, but this individual is under the age of 18, so it is considered human sex trafficking. This is an example of what is called survival sex, exchanging sexual acts for shelter, food, or other necessary items. A woman from China moves to the United States after accepting a job to be a nanny. Once she arrives, her travel documents and identification are taken from her. She is forced to work excessively long hours with no pay and little sleep. When she attempts to leave, she is told that if she leaves or tells anyone, her family in China will be killed. This example shows that fraud and coercion are used. No one physically abused her, but they used fraud and threats to control her. An undocumented foreign national arrives in the United States with assistance from his employer and begins to work on a farm. He is paid for his work, although very little, and his employer continues to charge him for things like room and board on top of what is owed for his travel expenses to the United States. He owes his employer a large amount of money that will be impossible to pay with the mounting debt. He tries to quit, but his employer threatens to report him to immigration. This is an example of debt bondage, where he owes his employer a large amount of money that is next to impossible to pay off. This gives victims a false sense of control, believing that only if they work hard enough, they can escape their situation. A young child begins chatting with what they believe to be another child on an online gaming app. The person exploits the normal sexual curiosity that children have, and the conversation turns sexual. The child sends a nude photo after being asked, at which point the person begins blackmailing the child, saying things like, "If you don't send me more pictures, I will tell your parents or share these images online." So the child continues to provide photographs. The man then sells the images to other men. In this situation, there is no physical contact and the child never leaves their home. Fraud and coercion are used in this example. So, in each of these examples, there is a victim, but not all examples have a trafficker involved, like in the case of the male teenager. Again, with minors, force, fraud, or coercion does not have to be present, and a trafficker may or may not be involved. So where does this happen? It is very difficult to obtain accurate statistics about trafficking because this is a very underground type of crime. And a lot like sexual assault and other types of violent crime, it can really be underreported. This is a map from the National Human Trafficking Hotline from 2019. This only shows the reports made to the hotline. It does not show the full scope of trafficking. In 2019, there were 22,326 victims and survivors identified in the U.S. Trafficking has been identified in all 50 states, including Maryland. If you look at the eastern coast, we are located right in the middle of that big red dot. So why is trafficking so prevalent in our state? There are many factors that can increase trafficking in any given city. Baltimore and the surrounding areas are big. We have large populations and lots of people visiting. We host a lot of sporting events. Whenever there is an influx of people into a city, it will raise the demand for commercial sex. We also have several major highways, including the I-95 corridor, that can provide easy access around the state and to other major cities. Large drug trades and gang activity will also increase trafficking. The Baltimore area also has adjacent areas of wealth and poverty, which will increase vulnerabilities of victims and raise the demand. This map is also from the National Human Trafficking Hotline and shows the numbers of reports in 2019. In 2019, there were 402 victims identified and 187 cases reported by the hotline. Again, this is just the reports made to the hotline and does not represent the full scope of human trafficking in our state. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the number of suspected and confirmed child sex trafficking cases almost doubled between 2018 and 2019 in Maryland. So where does this crime happen? For labor trafficking, it can be in restaurants, cleaning services, in construction, agriculture, factories, traveling sales, or nail salons. For sex trafficking, this can be online-based, street-based, hotel rooms, massage parlors, or even in private homes. I would now like to pass it along to Dr. David Williams to continue with tonight's presentation. Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Kelly. And thanks to all of you in the audience for taking the time to learn about this important topic. Human trafficking is not confined to a single group. This crime can affect any gender, sexual orientation, race, or socioeconomic status, but certain people may be more vulnerable when compared to others. There are root causes and risk factors that may explain why trafficking disproportionately affects some people. Traffickers target those who they see as susceptible, particularly minors who are often targeted because of their vulnerabilities, or seek people who are looking for a better life, need a job, or are financially insecure. According to the National Hotline, the top 5 risk factors for sex trafficking are substance abuse concerns, runaway homeless youth, recent migration or relocation from within or outside the US, unstable housing, and mental health concerns. LGBTQ youth are often more vulnerable due to the lack of acceptance and support after their families or friends become aware of their gender identity or sexual orientation. The 5 top risk factors for labor trafficking are recent migration or relocation, unstable housing, criminal record or criminal history, physical health concerns, and substance abuse concerns. Foreign nationals, either documented or undocumented, who have recently relocated or migrated are more at risk, as are those with a history of experiencing violence such as domestic violence, sexual assault, war or conflict, and social discrimination and family dysfunction or lack of social support. Next slide, please. Recruitment refers to how traffickers gain access to their victims, and grooming is a process that occurs when traffickers get the victim to trust them in an effort to ultimately control them. During the recruitment and grooming phases, traffickers will often leverage the victim's vulnerabilities to create some sort of dependencies. According to the Human Trafficking Hotline, the top 5 recruiting tactics for sex trafficking are posing as an intimate partner, giving a marriage proposal, making a job offer or advertisement, posing as a benefactor, or making a false promise or fraud. At times, traffickers will pose as a romantic partner, or they will pose as a person that can make their lives better. They may spend a lot of time grooming their victims, getting their victims to trust them, buying them gifts, giving them money, and taking care of them. We often think that human trafficking is done only by large international crime organizations, but there are also cases of local gangs or even families that traffic victims. As we've heard, in some cases, parents will exchange their children for items of value when they're desperate. There have been reports of mothers giving their child to their landlord in exchange for rent, or parents giving a child to their drug dealer in exchange for drugs. There's been a significant increase in contact between traffickers and potential victims taking place on social media. What a predator will typically do is start out connecting with a child in a non-threatening way. They will work to develop trust and manipulate the potential victim. They may pose as a child themselves online or attempt to relate to the child. They may exploit the natural sexual curiosity in children and test the boundaries of convention by gradually introducing topics in a sexual nature. Trafficking recruitment also occurs when a trafficker will send a loyal victim turned recruiter or bottom to befriend the potential victim and lure them in while getting a commission for each new victim that they recruit. This was reported in the Jeffrey Epstein case, where he would send girls out to recruit other young girls for his pleasure. Abduction is a much rarer occurrence than the films like The Taken has led the public to believe. This is because abduction makes it harder to transport someone. Abducted victims are more likely to attempt an escape during transportation phase of trafficking. For labor trafficking, the top 5 recruitment tactics are job offer or advertisement, false promises for job or travel, nanny or au pair positions, or in the hospitality and tourism industry. Labor trafficking victims are lured under the belief that they will be working and making money. Once they start a job, they realize that the conditions are poor or even dangerous, they're not paid what they were promised, or they're forced to work long hours for little or no pay. Areas where people are labor trafficked are farming, agriculture, where trafficked individuals are often difficult to identify because work crews move throughout the country with the planting and harvesting. In the health and beauty services, where these sites include nail salons, spas, and massage parlors, where the victims will perform a variety of tasks. Hospitality victims of labor trafficking can be forced to work at hotels and motels as maids and cooks, front of house staff, and cleaning staff, or they can also work at sporting events on cruise ships or at other tourist attractions like theme parks. In construction, immigrants are often trafficked in construction because the job requires them to move around. And domestic services, victims can be forced to work as household servants, babysitters, or cooks. Immigrants are often trafficked because they may not know the language or the area where they work, and the traffickers can take their passports or visas and threaten to deport them. Here again, we think of people coming into the US, but the daughter of an acquaintance of mine accepted a job as an au pair in Australia, only to find the position was much different than advertised. Fortunately, she had the ability and the means to return to the US, but not all victims are this lucky. Next slide, please. Traffickers will employ a variety of control tactics, and every situation is different. Many of the traffickers feel that it is a decision by the victim to stay in the life and that they can leave whenever they want to. This feeling may be translated to the victim as well, but it's not the truth. Victims may be isolated from family or friends physically or emotionally. They may have to ask permission to eat, drink, sleep, or even use the bathroom, creating a dependency on the trafficker. They may be abused physically, which can include physical beating or sexual assault. The trafficker can threaten to intimidate the victims or sometimes worse, their families. They can subject them to beatings, burnings, rape and sexual assault, starvation, confinement, and being tattooed by their owner. They may prey on people with substance abuse issues or may work to get them addicted to a substance in order to gain control over them. They may control them emotionally through psychological manipulation. In that case, isolation, controlling a person's contact with others, including family and friends, but they may also use drugs, threats, stalking, or other deceit methods. Or they may control them financially. Debt bondage is where a person is charged for the expense that the trafficker incurs, like transportation, housing, and food. Money is taken from the victim's salary toward this debt, and the trafficker ensures that it's never fully paid back. Money controlled by the owner and the trafficker keeps money from their victim, preventing them from leaving. They will withhold earnings or pay or make them work excessive hours. Next slide, please. No one sign will confirm trafficking, but some signs are unusual living conditions where the person lives with multiple people in cramped quarters or with the employer or even where they work. If they're paid very little or only paid through tips, they do not speak for themselves. They appear to be closely monitored by another person and that person speaks for them, even if the victim has English as their first language. If the victim has limited use of English language, someone else insists on interpreting for them. Other signs may be if the victim is unaware of their geographical area, or they may lack interest in normal activities. Next slide, please. It's a myth that the majority of victims will reach out for help and disclose their victimization. Some, as stated earlier, they don't consider themselves to be victims, or they may feel trapped, be afraid to leave, be too ashamed to tell anybody, or they may have an attachment to their abuser and truly feel that their abuser loves them. Some are addicted to substances and obtaining that substance is their main concern. Trafficking victims tend to distrust public officials because of previous contact with Child Protective Services or the police. The control a trafficker has on a victim may explain why a victim might stay in their situation or deny abuse. This question is not very black and white and is different for everyone. They may be afraid, isolated, have no money or that they need to leave. They may be ashamed. We don't know what their abuser has been telling them. Usually it's you're worthless or I'm the only one who loves you. Relationship with a trafficker may vary from the traditional pimp-victim dynamic, so males and transgender youth are less often appear to be under pimp control. The victim may have feelings of shame, embarrassment about family secrets, or guilt about interfering with family needs. And then there's trauma bonding. Think of Stockholm Syndrome from the 1973 bank robbery, where victims were dependent on their kidnappers so much that they eventually testified as character witness in their trial when the victims were released. Next slide, please. This is things to help. Learning more about, like you are this evening, or volunteering and supporting anti-trafficking efforts in the community. Be conscientious and informed consumer. Find out more about who may have picked your tomatoes or made your clothes. Meet with or write to your local, state, and federal elected officials and let them know that you care about combating human trafficking and ask what they're doing about it. Encourage your local schools or school districts to include human trafficking in their curricula and to develop protocols for identifying and reporting a suspected case of human trafficking or responding to a potential victim. Think about whether your workplace is trauma-informed and reach out to management or the HR team to encourage implementation of trauma-informed business practices. Businesses can provide jobs, internships, skill training, and other opportunities for traffic victims. If you are in the United States and believe someone may be a victim of human trafficking, call the 24-hour National Human Trafficking Hotline. Next slide, please. How you can help the suspected victim. First of all is safety, both the victim's and your own. It doesn't help the victim if in the process of intervening for them, the victim or yourself are injured or killed. Traffickers are serious people and they need to be taken seriously. Never put yourself at risk. Do not attempt to handle a situation by yourself. Call the hotline for assistance. Assure the victim that they're not to blame. Show compassion and have resources available before you approach them. Now here's Ashley to review some resources.
Thank you very much to Dr. Williams and Kelly Truax. We appreciate you sharing your expertise, and thank you very, very much for your presentations tonight. I am now going to discuss national and local resources, and then we will begin the Q&A segment. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is the #1 resource that I would recommend for anyone with human trafficking concerns. This hotline is available by phone, text, or online chat. It is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and it's completely confidential. You can report trafficking and ask for assistance or guidance, or you can provide this number directly to a suspected victim or survivor for them to call themselves. The hotline will not report the trafficking of an adult without their consent, but will alert the appropriate authorities for the suspected trafficking of anyone under the age of 18. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is also a really great resource to report tips. This can be done by calling 1-800-THE-LOST, and that is 1-800-843-5678, or by visiting cybertipline.org. This slide shows the local resources available in Baltimore County. If you are outside of the Baltimore County area, I would recommend calling the National Hotline or visiting them online to access a list of your local resources. It is not recommended to call the police and report on behalf of an adult victim. You should only report the human trafficking of an adult with that person's consent. If you report without their consent, you could actually be putting them in much more danger because they know their situation best. You can always call the National Hotline for guidance, but again, the hotline will not report an adult without their consent. If you are a mandated reporter, which includes healthcare providers, educators, human service workers, and police officers, you are required by law to report suspicions of child human trafficking. In that case, you would notify law enforcement and child protective services in your jurisdiction. In cases of emergencies, always call 911. For non-emergencies in Baltimore County and to report tips, you can email iwatch@baltimorecountymd.gov. To report child abuse and suspicions of child trafficking in Baltimore County, you can call 410-877-TIME, which is 410-877-8463. Turnaround is a great comprehensive resource in Baltimore County and Baltimore City for victims of all ages. They offer services like emergency crisis response, victim advocacy, trauma therapy, case management, legal services, assistance with emergency shelter, and referrals for other needs such as substance abuse and educational services. All of their services are available at absolutely no cost to the survivor. They have a 24-hour helpline, which is 443-279-0379, and a text line, which is 410-498-5956, and that is for individuals that might not be able to call. You can also visit them online at turnaroundinc.org. The Maryland Center for School Safety also has a tip line, which can be anonymous. and they can be accessed by calling 833-MD-BE-SAFE, and that is 833-632-7233, or by visiting safeschoolsmd.org. Lastly, GBMC offers healthcare services for victims of human trafficking. Medical forensic exams, also called SAFE exams, are available 24/7 at no cost to the victim. You can call 443-849-3323 or visit them online at gbmc.org/safe for more information. I would like to take this time to thank everyone very much for attending tonight's webinar. We really hope that you learned a lot about this topic and hope that you join us for our future webinars to learn even more about issues such as the trafficking of children and the complex needs of survivors. We also welcome your participation in our expert panel webinar that will take place in April. I would now like to begin our Q&A segment. If you still have any questions, please send them using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, which again can be sent anonymously. If we do not get to your question tonight, we will include in a future webinar.
Okay, first question is prostitution the same as human trafficking? The answer is no. Prostitution involves consenting adults voluntarily engaging in commercial sex, where there's no controlling individual involved. There are men and women who prostitute themselves, and it's not considered human trafficking if they are over the age of consent, which in Maryland is 18. However, if there's a third party involved who uses any type of force, fraud, or coercion to facilitate the commercial sex act, then it would be considered human trafficking. If the victim is under the age of 18, they cannot legally give consent, and so this would be considered human trafficking.
The second question is, what programs are available in Baltimore County and surrounding counties to assist victims of trafficking? We spoke about local resources, and they include programs specific to victims of human trafficking. Turnaround is a great comprehensive resource that provides services in Baltimore County and also in the city. They can provide so many great services to victims and survivors, like emergency crisis response, short-term or long-term counseling, and connection to other resources like legal, employment, education, and substance abuse treatment. As far as surrounding counties, I would refer you to that national hotline. Either call or visit their website to access the list of county-specific resources.
Can one's life be in danger? Yes. This is a serious business, as I said, and these are serious people. Unlike other illegal activities, for instance, when somebody sells a gun or drugs, the product does not return. When the trafficker sells their victim, they can and they do sell them again and again, oftentimes multiple times in a day. The trafficker will go to extreme lengths to protect their illegal enterprise. Any situation of human trafficking can be extremely dangerous, both for the victim as well as the person who may try to intervene. It's dangerous for the victim, as they may be murdered either by their trafficker or the sex buyer. They can be severely physically and sexually abused, leading to life-threatening injuries. They may contract HIV or other sexually transmitted infections, or they may be subject to unwanted pregnancies. Also, they can be neglected physically, which could lead to death. Neglect may involve preventing the victim from accessing medical care. Maybe they have undiagnosed medical condition like high blood pressure or diabetes, or they may be extremely malnourished. They may be denied prenatal care if they're pregnant and possibly be forced to have a home delivery, which without medical care could be extremely dangerous. They may be working in an unsafe condition. Think of farming or manufacturing and getting injured and not afford medical care. Substance abuse issues can lead to death if they overdose on the drug. And there may be concerns with victims of trafficking, and death is a big concern. Regarding trying to intervene, you should never put yourself at risk for injury or death yourself, which are definitely potentials in these situations.
The fourth question is, how does school staff identify, support, and report? This will actually be discussed in more detail during our future webinar on February 23rd, 2021. But an important thing to do is support a student. To support a student is to let them know you believe them and that this is not their fault. If a child discloses to you, you should be very honored that they trusted you enough to tell you. You want to keep that trust with them and do not make promises you cannot keep, and try to keep them involved in the process as much as possible. Follow your facility's policies, but I recommend letting the child know what you will be doing. For example, telling the child you will be contacting the police and why you were doing that. This will help to keep that trust between yourself and that student. Watch out for any signs like a student who is absent a lot or has a history of running away. Any student who appears to have concerns like exhaustion, malnourishment, or any type of abuse. If they refer to an older person who takes care of them, or they have a new group of older friends. And remember, no one sign will mean that the child is being trafficked, but they are all signs to look out for. When reporting, call CPS and law enforcement. When calling, let the operator know that you are reporting trafficking of a minor and that this is an urgent request for response.
Another question is, what can we do as citizens to find signs of victims and to be proactive about reporting to the authorities? I'd like to thank Mr. Olszewski for his interest in this topic and for all of you for helping to eliminate this scourge of human trafficking as being part of this webinar. Education of the public is critical in addressing this issue. Remaining aware and alert, recognizing when something isn't right, and offering assistance are the things that anyone in the community can do. Also, spreading awareness and education to others can help victims and survivors. If you suspect child trafficking, report this to Child Protective Services and law enforcement. Try to provide as much information as possible, but do not attempt to conduct your own investigation. Limit questions you ask of a child, because if you ask too many of the wrong questions, there's a potential that they could negatively affect the future investigation or provoke injury to the victim by the trafficker. Just gather enough information needed to make your report. If you suspect a trafficking of an adult, you can be supportive and provide resources to them, but always call a national hotline for assistance or to access resources.
What is the most significant psychological needs of victims of human trafficking that starts the healing process? The healing process can start almost immediately. The most important things are for that person to feel safe, believed, and to have access to necessities such as food, clothing, and shelter. Offer support and let them know that you believe them. Offer them food or even give them a blanket. Build trust with them and let them know that you are here to help them. Give some power back and let them make their own decisions if able.
Dave, before you start, I just wanted to jump in really quick. I did see one of the questions on the Q&A that someone was concerned that there was a mistake in the phone number for our Child Protective Services here in Baltimore County. So I just wanted to give that number out one more time. The number is 410-887-TIME, and that's 410-887-8463. And thank you to the attendee who noticed that error.
All right, next question. What if I suspect that a child is a trafficking victim, but I'm not sure? Should I make a report? The answer is yes. In Maryland, there are mandatory reporters, those who typically have contact with children, such as medical professionals, teachers, police, and others. If they suspect child abuse, they must report it. A regular citizen should report it if they have a reasonable suspicion. To report suspected trafficking of a child, as well as any type of child abuse, you do not need proof. You only need a reasonable suspicion. If you can verbalize why you have a suspicion, that is plenty to make a report. The verbal report should be made to Child Protective Services immediately with a written follow-up report within 48 hours. The report is confidential. If you make the report in good faith, you will not incur any liability under Family Law 5-708. And I can provide more information on that if you request it.
How can I protect myself as a young woman? You can protect yourself in many different ways. First, just being aware of this crime can help to prevent it from happening to you. If you are being targeted and you recognize recruitment or grooming, you can stop that process before it's too late. Always be aware of your surroundings and who you keep in your life. If you are dating, think about bringing a friend to a first meeting or arrange a group date if you have not met that person before. Be aware that people are not always who they say they are. If you do find yourself in a bad situation, know what resources to reach out to. And another question is, what can high school students do if they learn about or suspect human trafficking within their community or neighborhoods? If you are a high school student and learn about a potential victim, you should report your concerns to a trusted adult, whether it be your school resource officer, guidance counselor, or a teacher. Do not attempt to intervene, as this could be a very dangerous situation. If someone comes to you and discloses to you, be supportive and provide them with resources like the National Hotline. You can also work to raise awareness in your school, maybe by starting an anti-trafficking group or a campaign.
Okay, and we actually received a good amount of questions. We're going to try to get to everyone's questions, but like I said, if we are unable to get to your question tonight, we will definitely include on a future session. So there was a question, are there local organizations working on this issue? And are there organizations who can provide this training in our schools? I can answer that question. I know that Turnaround, the resource that we mentioned, they will be presenting at our next webinar on February 23rd. And I believe that they will be talking about the school system and how to get the training in the schools. They have been named as our regional navigator in Baltimore County and our surrounding areas. And I believe that they will be working on trying to get some kind of education to the schools, whether it be for our administrators, teachers, and guidance counselors, or something that's more focused towards the preventative side with the children. Okay, and then we have another question, and either Kelly or Dave, you can take this one. Do you think people are taken away from our area when trafficked? Is this common or is this the exception?
Dave, do you want to answer?
Yeah. I don't know the statistics on it, but there's a lot of what I'd hate to call homegrown trafficking, where local people keep the traffic victim local. Of course, there are some instances where they're travel north or south on Interstate 95 or Interstate 81 or out Interstate 70. Maryland has the advantage or disadvantage of having a number of major thoroughfares through it, and two hot spots are Miami and New York, and it's Maryland's between the two. So I don't know what the specific ratio would be between people from elsewhere or people from here, but either way, it's a problem.
Okay, our next question, and I can take this one, is as an ER physician, when I see someone suspected of sex trafficking, what are the first essential steps I need to take to care for my patient, especially when their trafficker is in the room? So we have a webinar session coming up on March 23rd that will discuss healthcare. But for this answer, I think that obviously safety is going to be number one. If you are working in a hospital setting, if you do not have a policy in place, I would urge you to try to develop a policy for situations like this. You're going to want to try to talk to that patient of yours if you can get them away from their trafficker. Sometimes we have to come up with creative ways in the hospital setting, such as having the potential or suspected trafficker fill out paperwork at the front desk so you can get a few moments with your patient alone. Sometimes it can be doing a fake order for maybe an ultrasound or something like that to try to separate them in order to have some time to at least say, are you okay? Can we do anything for you? Sometimes they might accept resources, sometimes they won't, but all you can do is just really try to get as many resources on board with them before they're discharged. Okay, the next question is, I heard that some victims of sex trafficking are arrested. Is this to protect them or is this Maryland law? Would either Kelly or Dave like to answer that? I could answer that if you would like.
Go ahead.
I just would like to say that I think, especially now, what the police are trying to do is raise awareness rather than arrest the victims and provide them with resources.
Yep, I agree with Kelly on that point. I know that historically, the trafficking laws were just put into place in 2000. So it really hasn't been that long since we've had laws to protect victims of this. In the past, if there was a I can speak to Baltimore County. We will also be having the webinar coming up in April with the panel discussion, and we will have a law enforcement representative on that one, and they can speak to that a little bit more. But in Baltimore County, they do not arrest minor victims of human trafficking.
And this is actually one of the issues, is if a victim of trafficking performs an illegal act under the coercion or force or fraud, there's a statute called vacatur, which prevents them from actually being charged on those types of offenses.
Okay, our next question is, are there any movies or documentaries you can suggest to raise further awareness in youth? I've shown 8 Days. Is that still a good movie to show? I can't speak to that because I have not seen that film. Have either of you seen that film, 8 Days, Dave or Kelly?
I have not.
I have not.
Okay, so we can't speak to that, but I know that there are some good documentaries out there about what sex trafficking really is. I would not suggest watching any of the Hollywood movies like Taken, as Dr. Williams had mentioned. But there is a good one called I Am Jane Doe, and I believe that's on Netflix. So I would point you in that direction. If I hear of anything else, I can send that out into an email for all of our attendees.
And Ashley, there's also one, it's called In Plain Sight. I'm not sure if it's still available on Netflix, but they actually interview a program that functions out of Baltimore City
Okay,
as a
great.
part of the documentary.
Our next question is, not having a legal ID makes it tough for a victim. They have no way of identifying themselves to get Medicaid or even a job, so they feel trapped. How can someone get an ID? I'd be happy to answer this if you would like.
Sure.
So for situations like that, I would definitely refer to your local resources. So I would refer a case like this to Turnaround, and they have some legal resources and other resources that would be able to help a victim get set up with getting their life back together, even if it's just getting an ID or their documentation. Okay. The next question is there any way to find out if there are or were any sex trafficking cases in your area? And I assume this question is kind of related to when we look at the sex register, the sex offender registry. And I'm not aware of any way to find out because the tracking of human trafficking victims is not great. I can say that it is getting better. I would think that with Turnaround being named the regional navigator, I believe that they will be keeping really good track of when victims are identified. But as far as now, I don't think that there is any way to kind of look up that kind of data. Do you have any other information on that, Dr. Williams or Kelly?
I do not.
No, I do not either.
So that can be a question that I will add to the next webinar session, and we can let a representative from Turnaround answer that question. Okay, I think that's all the questions. I do see a few more, but they will be much more appropriate in future webinars, so I will definitely include them in the future webinars. Again, thank you to all of our attendees, our partners, our presenters, Kelly Truax and Dr. David Williams, and to our county executive for his opening remarks. We hope that you enjoyed this webinar and learned a lot, and we hope that you join us for future webinars. And that concludes tonight's session.